The year is 1984, and you are an up-and-coming businessman who recently was informed that you're getting a promotion. You know what that means, right? It's time to get a sports car. There's the Countach, but that's a bit overkill. The Ferrari Testarossa is really tempting, but your boss drives one of those, and also you're American. Maybe you should get a Corvette. Good thing, because GM has just completely redesigned the Corvette in the form of the C4, and it's now not only outperforming anything Europe has to offer, it's also half the price. Here's the thing though, no matter what you choose, it'll all be okay for one simple reason. All of these cars, in fact, virtually every sports car you could purchase has one amazing feature: pop-up headlights. Despite being most prevalent toward the end of the 70s and through the 90s, pop-up headlights actually go all the way back to the 1930s, and really to this car, the 1936 Cord 810. As the 1930s rolled around, manufacturers began experimenting with the very form of the automobile, with a focus on a relatively new concept, which was streamlining. In 1933, Cadillac unveiled a car literally termed Aerodynamic. In 1934, Chrysler created this, the Airflow. Yeah, the names aren't very subtle. Well, there was another lesser-known American brand, Auburn Cord, who wanted to take this concept of streamlining to another level, not just, the big curvy fenders and swooping body lines. No, they went beyond that, and one of the things that they did would be decades ahead of its time. Hidden mechanical pop-up headlights, taken straight from a small airplane actually. Although they weren't headlights on the airplane. Despite the fact that they were opened via hand crank, they were way ahead of their time, not just in concept, but also in the appearance that they gave the car. In short, they made it look cool. Now, this car wouldn't go on to be any sort of commercial success, and its influence wasn't apparent right away. Over the next few decades, similar concepts would make it onto production cars, things like retractable headlights, not really pop-up headlights. Those would show up on cars like the Buick Riviera. Recessed headlights were utilized on cars like the Alfa Romeo Duetto and Jaguar E-Type. As the 1960s rolled around, automakers began prioritizing performance and wind-cheating shapes. Pop-up headlights then re-emerged as a solution to improving aerodynamics while maintaining the need for high-beam functionality, just like on that original Auburn Cord. What we would consider sort of modern pop-up headlights, like the ones that we would all come to know and love, would first appear in production form on the Lotus Elan in 1962. Now, the Elan's pop-up headlights used a simple vacuum-operated system. Engine vacuum pressure lifted the headlights when the car was running, and they automatically lowered when the engine was off. This system relied on the car's intake manifold to create vacuum, and that vacuum was used to raise the lights, and a spring helped them lower when not in use. And this was really efficient, it was lightweight, but the system did have some quirks, like slower operation and potential issues if there was a vacuum leak. Despite these quirks, the pop-up headlights really helped maintain the Elan's sleek design. This car was so important. It was a British roadster, but one that was far ahead of its time in terms of overall design. Of course, it would be the main inspiration for the Miata, another great pop-up headlight car. The goal with the Elan was an incredibly lightweight, compact car, and though there wasn't much in terms of aerodynamic testing, it was an aerodynamic car. The pop-up headlights really did prove to be an excellent solution to the problem of traditional headlights and aerodynamics. 1 year later, the C2 Corvette was unveiled to the world, a radical upgrade from the previous generation, not only in terms of power, but also aerodynamics, with a set of some of the most iconic pop-up headlights in automotive history. Then a few years later, the Lamborghini Miura would take the concept further. The Miura was widely considered, and is widely considered, the world's first supercar, and it featured pop-up headlights that rose from behind a set of kind of eyelid-style covers. The Miura's pop-up headlights helped define its sleek wedge-shaped design, and the placement on the front fenders gave the car a highly aggressive look. The Miura's success really popularized pop-up headlights, especially in high-performance sports cars. Still, few other manufacturers in the 60s would go on to use this feature. It would really be the 70s and the 80s where pop-up headlights would peak in terms of popularity, in part because of the shift from more curvy designs to that of the wedge-shaped car. Now, during the 70s and 80s, a wide range of automakers adopted the pop-up headlight feature, particularly on sports cars, but also supercars and luxury cars. pop-up headlights really became a symbol of cutting-edge design and technology, with manufacturers using them to make cars look sleeker, more aggressive, and modern. Ferrari's iconic 308 and 328 models featured retractable headlights that became one of the defining elements of the car's wedge-shaped designs. Ferrari continued using pop-up headlights through the 80s, think models like the Testarossa and the 512 TR, cementing the pop-up headlights association with Italian sports cars and exoticism. Porsche's venture into the luxury Grand Tourer segment with the 928 showcased a unique take on pop-up headlights. Rather than being hidden within the body, the 928's headlights sat partially exposed in the front, rotating upwards to achieve full illumination. The strangest pop-up headlights from the 70s undoubtedly goes to the Triumph TR7. Now, at first you might think that the flaps covering the headlights would just pivot at the back, but Triumph decided to take a different approach. They mounted the headlights in a kind of boxy enclosure that lifts up almost vertically, which really looks strange when it's raised. Now, perhaps the most influential car to feature pop-up headlights as the 70s came to a close goes to the Mazda RX-7. The car's headlights played a key role in giving the car its sleek, rotary-powered sports car image. The RX-7 became one of the most famous Japanese cars to feature pop-up headlights, helping popularize the concept in the rapidly growing market of affordable performance cars. Then in the 80s, pop-up headlights also started appearing on compact performance cars. The Toyota AE86 became an iconic example, known for its handling prowess and drifting capabilities. This car's pop-up headlights just gave it such an iconic look. So many cars from this era would become cult classics, and this feature that for many of us is so foreign, it just had so much charm. By the end of the 80s, pop-up headlights were everywhere. To put this into perspective, a 1989 car and driver test looked at 16 different sub-$20,000 coupes for comparison, and just 5 of the models didn't have pop-up headlights. My personal favorite car from the 80s is the C4 Corvette with its iconic forward-flipping setup instead of the common lift and retract mechanism. When activated, the headlights didn't simply raise vertically, instead they rotated forward, flipping up from the hood and revealing the light housings. It's just another cool way to do this mechanism. This design not only enhanced the car's aggressive and angular appearance when the lights were on, but it added kind of an element of drama to the car, making the headlights a striking visual highlight of the Corvette, just like on the C2 Corvette. Now, to me, cars have faces, and pop-up headlights represented a time when cars could have such different and distinct expressions, and these headlights played a big part in that. From the hopeful eyes of the Lancia Scorpion, to the goofy, happy-faced Lamborghini Countach, to the cool and demure and mindful face of the Honda NSX. These cars have so much personality, mainly because of their headlights. And also, pop-up headlights might be the only automotive feature that when they're not working properly, they can actually make the car look more appealing. From sleepy, barely open headlights to winky single headlights. On top of that, pop-up headlights made it so that when it wasn't nighttime, your car could look like a race car. They were so sleek, and they fit so well with just the simple and subtle designs of this time. They're just quintessential 80s design theme. But then the 90s rolled around and, safety standards started to happen. Sort of. One of the primary reasons pop-up headlights disappeared was the introduction of stricter pedestrian safety regulations, particularly in Europe. In the 1990s and 2000s, automotive safety standards started placing greater emphasis on reducing injuries to pedestrians in the event of a collision. The goal was to minimize sharp or hard edges that could cause severe injuries during an accident, and this is why cars, they basically look like blobs today. The idea was that when raised, pop-up headlights created a rigid, protruding surface in the event of a pedestrian collision. These headlight pods could cause more serious injuries such as fractures or head trauma compared to the flush integrated headlights that were designed to crumple and absorb some of the impact. Now, it's not as simple as, they outlawed them. That's never how it goes. In Europe, a long time coming regulation known as EC 78-2009 would play a key role in this shift, mandating that designs must be better suited to protect pedestrians. So while manufacturers could technically redesign pop-up headlights to be more compliant, it became increasingly impractical to do so while maintaining the sleek, low-profile designs that pop-up headlights had originally been created for. In simple terms, pop-up headlights could have stayed, but they would have sucked. Mainly, they wouldn't have been able to keep that sleek look. It wasn't really possible for manufacturers, especially making sports cars. It wouldn't have worked, and they couldn't justify making cars just for the American market. Europe matters too, I guess. Now, I know we may all hate these kinds of regulations, but if you've ever seen a Mustang owner leaving a car meetup, you understand that pedestrians, they get put at risk all the time, especially by sports car owners. Well, today it's SUV owners, but that's another story. But it wasn't just safety standards. Pop-up headlights were initially popular because they allowed designers to create sleek, low-nose designs without having to worry about where to fit the headlights. But of course, as we know, companies like Porsche with the 911, they'd been making low-slung, low-nose, non-pop-up headlight sports cars for forever. I mean, I do believe there is a slant-nose 911 that technically had pop-up headlights, but for the most part, it is very much possible to make the same kind of car that they were trying to make with the wedge designs without pop-up headlights. Pop-up headlights, cause significant drag, disrupting airflow over the car. In high-performance sports cars, manufacturers increasingly sought to reduce drag to improve fuel efficiency and to maximize speed. And who wants to just drive fast during the day, right? By the late 90s, advances in aerodynamics meant that designers could integrate headlights into the body in a way that maintained sleek lines without the need for these retractable units. Fixed headlights with advanced design and materials allowed cars to retain a streamlined shape even while improving safety and efficiency. It also doesn't hurt that traditional headlights are more reliable, less complicated than pop-up headlights, which were quite prone to mechanical failure. As automotive technology improved, the reliability of fixed headlight systems combined with new materials like polycarbonate lenses and powerful xenon or LED lights made pop-up headlights seem outdated. Fixed headlights just became better at pretty much everything, including providing efficient lighting without all the need for moving parts. So it is understandable. And so by the late 90s and early 2000s, car design trends really started to shift. The futuristic appeal of pop-up headlights began to fade as smoother, more integrated designs became in style. Consumers started to prefer cars with sleek, flush-mounted headlights that provided better visibility and a more contemporary look, but that didn't stop a few manufacturers from continuing to make cars with pop-up headlights well beyond everyone else. The C5 Corvette and Lotus Esprit were late models that retained pop-up headlights, carrying them well into the 21st century. Not all cars were improved with the switch to traditional headlights, though. Perhaps the cars that suffered most were the iconic Honda NSX and Ferrari Testarossa. These are cars that were not made to have anything but pop-up headlights. The Testarossa just didn't look like a Testarossa anymore, and the NSX just didn't look like an NSX anymore. Now, to quote Daniel O'Callaghan, the appeal of pop-up headlights is easy to explain. Humans naturally tend to anthropomorphize inanimate objects, and headlamps are a car's eyes. Enabling these eyes to open and shut or even blink merely heightens that sensation. I mourn the demise of such headlamps, and given the current fashion for SUVs with their cliff-like front ends, I cannot see them coming back into fashion anytime soon, which is rather a shame. And he's completely right. The fact that cars are now pretty much all, whether SUV or sedans, having that sort of steep front end, it just doesn't look like we're going to be seeing pop-up headlights come back anytime soon. And though Tesla can apparently sell a massive, low visibility monstrosity made up entirely of sharp edges and made of stainless steel, at least in America, why can't we bring back pop-up headlights and wedge designs? How amazing would it be if the C8 Corvette came with an American-only pop-up headlight spec? People would love that. Pop-up headlights were fun, and at least in the sports car world, that's what it should all be about. I would love to hear from you guys. Have you owned any 70s or 80s or 90s cars that had this feature? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Drive safe.